So if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that I'm a big fan of using samples. That's where a lot of my sounds come from. The drums, the vocals, the bass, the keys, a lot of it is sampled, and a lot of that comes from my sample collection going back almost 2 decades. But I'm still a big fan of finding new samples, and I'm online all the time trying to find something new. Now, most of that comes from Splice. I'm a big fan and signed up subscribed member of Splice, and I love their catalogue. I think it's great and it really inspires me. But recently I logged in there to kind of check on some of the sounds that I recently downloaded. I wanted to find something that was quite similar. And then I realized that some of those sounds had disappeared. They actually disappeared from splice.com. And the reason for that was that they were actually owned by Loopmasters. And recently Loopmasters took their whole catalog back from Splice to only have on loopmasters.com and to put in their new Loopcloud software. Now, I tried Loopcloud out before in the early days, and I wasn't that keen on it. I wasn't keen on that software, and I ditched it quite quickly, and I just kind of liked the way Splice worked. But recently, a whole load of my friends and fellow producers said that Loopcloud 4 was just really great, and they just loved the way it's kind of transformed how they use samples and how they find samples. And Loopmasters just released Loopcloud 5. So I thought, well, it's probably a great opportunity for me to go in and have a look at both of them, kind of compare the both, see the pros and cons, and see which one I liked more. Now, I've got a subscription for both. I haven't been given either of these. I'm actually subscribed to both, so I'm almost doing it for myself as well. I want to kind of figure out which one I like using the most.
Let's get it, get it, get it, get it.
Right, so let's get into it. And much like most video streaming platforms, Netflix, Amazon, HBO, all of those are now asking for a subscription, and you're finding yourself with multiple subscriptions, and that's exactly how I am with sample libraries now. So I've got a subscription for Splice and a subscription for Loopcloud, and I kind of want to see which one is better, to see which one I could live with more. Maybe I could ditch one of them, maybe I could keep the other, I'm not sure yet. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you some of the things that I like about both and some of the things I don't like about both. So I'm going to try and be fair. I've been with Splice for quite a while now, but Loopcloud has really impressed me. It's got some great features in there. So I'm going to try and be as unbiased as possible. So let's get into it. And first of all, we're going to look at Splice. Now, I've been using Splice for quite a while, and I think the thing I love most about them is just their catalogue of sounds. They are just amazing. I think it's providers like Sample Magic, for example. I've been buying Sample Magic packs for quite a while, and the fact that they were on there almost sold the service for me. I knew that those packs are amazing, and I think that kind of pedigree of sound kind of carries through on the whole of Splice. Some of these are fantastic. Their searching is really intuitive. For example, you search via instrument, and then you can narrow it down by key, for example. So if I'm looking for some vocals in the key of D, for example, I can easily pull them out. Now, I'm not actually narrowing it down by genre, for example, but that would then actually give me more choice. So I might be able to use a hip hop sound, or a hip hop vocal rather, within my house track. And that was something that maybe somebody else wouldn't find, for example. I'm finding it because it actually fits in the key that I want and it's a vocal. So yeah, I love that way of being able to find sounds within here. And I think that works really well. So you can go through here and you can preview all of the sounds. And this works really well, really quickly. And I think that's one of the things that I really love about it. Now you can move really quickly through with the mouse. I think that's one of the things that I really love about it, the fact that you can kind of preview different parts of the samples. But one of my favorite things is using the keyboard. So you can use the down and up arrow to go from sample to sample, and then you can use the left and right to kind of go through that sample. It just makes it so quick to preview sounds and find the bit that you want. And I tend to kind of have it going in the background whilst I'm working in my DAW. So I'll have, for example, my track playing in the background in my DAW, and then in the browser over the top, I'll be kind of previewing sounds over the top of it. It's not perfect, but it does kind of work quite nicely. And you do actually have an independent volume control at the top right. So you can actually kind of almost balance the sound all right. It's not perfect, but it kind of works for how I kind of work. And I've kind of accepted it for what it is. It's not like Ableton where you can play a sample in time with, you know, the track as it's playing, but you kind of get a feel. You can kind of almost imagine what it's going to be like when it's sitting in the track. Now, Splice does come with its own app. So the app actually sits on your desktop and it allows you to, when you click on one of these, for example, if I wanted to download this vocal, I click on it, it will then download using the software straight to my computer. So that now says it's downloaded. And if I go over to the Splice app, you can see that vocal is now in there. And I can easily just open up Live and drag and drop it straight into my project at any point. So for example, I can put it in there. That's not where I want to put it, but you get the idea. It's very easy to kind of drag and drop the sample in there. Now, while I'm talking about this app, it is not the best app. It's not my favorite app. And in fact, when we talk about it a bit later, I think Loopcloud actually has a slightly better app. Well, actually it has a lot better app, to be honest. But I do kind of like how stripped back this is. I like how minimal this is and how easy it is to use. It still has a few things that I find really annoying, but it works quite well. So yes, you can get to these samples quite quickly. You can also search for them. So you can go through here quite quickly and find the samples that you've already downloaded. And you can still split them up by instrument and by key and things like that. So you can still kind of filter your own collection you've downloaded from there. Now, speaking of that, all of the samples that are downloaded through here are then downloaded to a folder. Yes, you have the app and you can kind of search through it like that, but they're actually downloaded to a folder. Now, I usually have that folder within my Ableton. So I've got the Splice folder, and then you've got a sounds folder within there, then a packs, and then it's got all the different packs. Now, this doesn't make it the easiest to kind of look through. If you wanted to browse through your samples, for example, I have something in the two-step garage anthems folder here. If I go into here, we can see that I've just got like a few samples that I've downloaded from there. Just a few little bits here and there, but it makes it quite hard to kind of find it if you want to do it from Ableton. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky to kind of look through those samples to find what you want it to. Yeah, I think it's probably better to look through in the actual app than it is within Ableton. So the Splice app really just kind of sits in the background there. There's no integration really with your DAW, and I think that's a real shame. That's something that it could really do with. We're so used to now being able to preview things along with our DAW, especially with Ableton. The fact that we can now preview loops in time with our track, it helps us really kind of see when things fit in. And the fact that we can't really do this with the Splice app is a real shame. I think that's something that in future generations of that app, it would be really good. If they can make it into a plugin that kind of really works with your DAW, I think that would be really good. And that's something that Loopcloud does really well. Okay, so let's move on to Loopcloud. Now, I did try out Loopcloud when it first launched and I wasn't that keen on it. It was quite buggy. I just didn't feel it kind of worked for me. So I kind of ditched it very, very early. But recently I've had a few producer friends of mine saying about how great it has become. And I think that a lot of that kind of came around about Loopcloud version 4. A lot of features kind of came in. They made it more robust, a lot of bug fixes. And I thought with the launch of Loopcloud 5, it'd probably be a good idea for me to kind of test it out and see what it's become, like kind of what it is now. So that's what I've done. I've kind of installed it. I've been using it for the last few weeks on a paid subscription, and I've been using it within my own tracks and remixes. I wanted to give it kind of a real world test to see what it could do and whether it's something I could imagine myself using. So let's get in and have a look at it. So just like Splice, Loopcloud is a subscription plan. So you need to sign up, you get a free trial to start with, and then you have to start paying a certain amount per month to get a certain amount of credits to download samples. But this is backed up by Loopmasters' full catalog. Now, Loopmasters has been going years. It's probably one of the longest going sample sites out there, if not the longest going. And to be honest, I've got loads of Loopmasters sample packs on my hard drive. I do tend to go for things like Sample Magic and other ones like that, but Loopmasters have always been quite consistent in what they do. So they are, the service, Loopcloud service, is definitely backed up by a lot of great content. So when you sign up to Loopcloud, yes, you then have to download their software. All of it is software based rather than Splice, which you can do through the website. All of this is via their software. So you download their Loopcloud software. So when you install the Loopcloud software, it actually installs a plugin. So all you need to do is drag and drop that plugin onto a new channel and then use the plugin. Now this plugin does not look very complicated at all. And don't worry, this is not the actual Loopcloud service. It is purely just the playback mechanism that kind of links the software to your DAW. Now, I think this is a really good idea. They've kept the app separate, and that therefore it's not actually running within your DAW. It's not slowing your DAW down. Yes, it is still on your system. It's still software that is running, so it will be using still memory, but it's not actually in your DAW, which I think is probably a good idea more than anything. It means your DAW will load up really, really quickly, and you're not waiting for the Loopcloud software to load as well. So once that plugin is activated within your project, all you need to do then is launch the software. So this is the Loopcloud software. And as we can see at the bottom right-hand corner here, it says it's connected to Ableton Live. So this is where we put the plugin within our project. That plugin is now communicating with the software, and it's sending information like the tempo and the position within the track. And then this software will then send information back to that plugin. So when we preview samples within here, it will go straight into that track within our project, which is really, really amazing. It works really well. And over the couple of weeks I've been testing this, it hasn't crashed once. Now, as for the interface of Loopcloud, I'm a bit on the fence about this because I feel like there's just so much crammed within here. It feels like you're almost learning a brand new DAW just using this Loopcloud software. There's just so much going on. For example, on the right-hand corner here, we have this chart of popular packs. And yeah, it doesn't need to be there. Thankfully, you can actually kind of close it down, so you can actually get rid of that. And yeah, I suppose this homepage is kind of good for discoverability. It will show you all the new packs that have just been added to Loopmasters. So if you're looking for something brand new, then yeah, you can jump into here. But to be honest, it just feels like there's so much stuff within here, so many different features. Now, I like keeping things as simple as possible, and that's probably why I like the Splice app. It's only got the things in there that you really need. And I don't like it when kind of software is kind of gold plated. They put in features in there just because they can. And yes, I suppose if you're using this to its absolute maximum, then it's probably really good for you. You probably really love it. But there's just so much stuff within here that just feels very complicated when you first start to use it. So I kind of wish there was ways of almost kind of stripping this back a bit, maybe put it into a simple mode of some sort, which allows you to kind of go through and just focus on getting the samples in there rather than doing so much stuff within this software. Okay, so let's find some samples. Now this has different categories, much like Splice has got. So you can search under instrument and genre and key and everything else like that. However, I found that their tagging system doesn't work as well as Splice. It seems to have different things in different categories that shouldn't be in there. I'll give you an example. If we go into effects, and then maybe let's narrow this down by genre. Let's choose garage effects, for example. Now this is going to go through, first of all, it's going to find all the results on my hard drive. So these are all the ones in my personal library. And then it's going to look online. It's going to go through all the results online that they've got. Now, if I go through here, for example, we've got a drum loop within here. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how that drum loop is within the effects category. So I've got it filtered by effects and garage, but which you would think would then show you all the effects that are within garage. But for some reason, it's showing me that drum loop, which is actually within the garage category, but it's not within the effects. It's not an effect. So yeah, I find it very strange. I'm not quite sure if I'm not using the filters right, or there's something not going on right with their searching, but really that shouldn't be showing within there. I should be able to just find effects that within the garage category. So yeah, that can be a little bit weird. But yeah, there are some really good ways of searching within here. As I say, you can look actually on the store. So you can choose ones that are just online or just ones that are within your library, and you can easily filter it through there. You can also look for loops and one-shots. And you can also add samples to your favorites. So say, for example, you find a sample that you want to use a bit later. You don't want to use it right now, but you want to kind of almost put it on a short list. Then you can add it to your favorites, and you can filter by favorites as well, which is really quite handy. It's kind of a nice way to find those samples that, you know, inspired you or you found a bit earlier on. Now, while we're talking about searching and finding samples, one thing I will say is that I've noticed Loopcloud to be quite slow sometimes. Now, usually when you're going through samples, it might load the samples a little bit slow, which is understandable because it's streaming from online, but sometimes it's really slow. It might take 5, 6, 10 seconds in between each sample to load them. Now, I don't have a slow connection. I've got quite a fast connection, and going through splice.com, it's so quick to preview all the different samples. So it's not like it's my internet connection. But the other day when I was producing, I noticed that it was going really slow. And then all of a sudden it started erroring on me. it was almost like a period of 2 or 3 hours where Loopcloud just wasn't working. It wasn't previewing anything. And as I say, I was using Splice.com. That was working just fine. I tried restarting the software, restarting my router, everything you'd normally do to kind of fix something like this. But it was definitely something to do with the Loopcloud service. So yeah, that was quite frustrating because if I only had Loopcloud as my sample source and I couldn't get to it, then that would be pretty frustrating. I wouldn't be able to find the samples that I wanted to, and either I'd have to look through my local collection of samples, or I'd just have to wait. I'd be sitting here twiddling my thumbs until that Loopcloud service came online again. So yes, it might, I don't know how often that happens. I've only been using it for a couple of weeks, but the fact that it was offline for, you know, a good part of the day the other day when I was coming to use it, yeah, it was a bit frustrating. So hopefully they can improve that. Hopefully they can improve the hosting and make it a bit faster. But I think that's one of my major concerns with it. Now, one of the things that I do really like about this, and having said that, the fact that I didn't like the fact it's got so many features within here and it's so complicated, the fact that you can actually cut samples up whilst you're in here is quite interesting. So say, for example, let's find a vocal sample. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to search for a vocal sample. And we'll search by female. Let's go for a female vocal. And this is showing me all the samples. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a bit of this track in the background. I'm just going to loop it up so we can put a sample over the top of it. You don't actually need this plugin open whilst you're browsing. It can easily just sit in the background. So let's just play this back. So there we go, we got our track playing in the background. Now let's start auditioning some loops along in the background of vocals. So what I need to do is, when I'm pressing play on the track, what I need to do is press play on here as well, and they'll play back together. So as you notice there, it's really easy to kind of play them in time with your track. But one of the things I really love about this is the fact that it can actually pitch shift the samples as well. So whereas Splice.com, you will search for samples in a certain key, and you can still do that with Loopcloud. One of the great things about this is you can actually search for any key and then actually transpose it automatically. So if I go into Loopcloud software, you see that we've got this pitch box here. And what I can do is I can actually set the pitch of my track. So say, for example, the pitch of my track is actually A sharp. I can set it as A sharp and then click auto. And then any sample that I listen to after this will automatically be pitch shifted to my track, which is pretty amazing. And that kind of, rather than having like, say, 20 samples that are in the key that you want, you've then got 1,000 samples that will then kind of fit to the right key. It doesn't matter what key they're in, it will kind of fit to the right key. Now, it's not perfect and it's not always the way you want to do it. Sometimes samples might not sound great when they've been pitch shifted up or down too much, but you might just find those samples that you wouldn't normally find if you were searching via key, which I think is really cool. And I've already found some samples within my tracks where it works quite nicely.
It's showtime. It's showtime. It's showtime.
Just how much I love you, I've been trying to show you.
So I find that really handy. It's a really kind of good way to kind of get inspiration and find those samples that you wouldn't normally use. You probably kind of discount them because they weren't in the right key. So you'd hear it and you think, well, that doesn't quite go. But with that software, it kind of transposes automatically for you, gives you a whole load of extra samples that you could use. Now, as I mentioned, one of the things you can do is actually chop up that sample within this software. So without having to buy the sample, you don't actually have to spend your credit on a sample. You can actually play around with it first to see how you can make it work. So for example, I can loop it up in a different way, or I can cut it up to see if it fits better. I can kind of come up with some ideas within the Loopcloud software before I even download and pay for that sample. So as you can see there, it's really easy to kind of cut up that sample and play around with it before you've even bought it. So you don't even need to spend the 2 credits or whatever it is to download that sample. You can actually play around with it to see if it works straight off. So once I've gone through and I've actually edited that sample and seen how it can work within my track, once I've chosen to spend my credits on downloading it, I then have the option to download the original or the processed version, the one that I've actually been editing down here. So say for example, if I drag and drop the original into my Ableton project here, here's how it sounds. So that's the original sample as it first was, but I can also drag and drop the processed one as well. So this includes all of the changes that I've made within here. So it's got the pitch shift downwards, and it's also got the cuts and kind of manipulation I've done within the editor here. So it works really well kind of chopping up the sample within the Loopcloud software itself. I have to say that I'd much rather chop it up within Ableton. If I found a sample on here that I really wanted to use, I'd actually straight download it and then put it into Ableton and chop it up within there, just because I like the way you kind of edit samples within Ableton. I find this a little bit clunky to kind of work with, but if you get to the end of the month and you're kind of very low on tokens, for example, you can only download a few more samples that month and you don't want to spend out on more tokens to download more samples, then yeah, it's probably a really good idea to kind of preview stuff first to get a good idea whether you can actually use that sample. So that's just a quick run through of Splice and Loopcloud. Now I didn't go into every feature because that probably would have made a video that was about 5 hours long. And let's face it, nobody's going to watch that. We're all going to get bored. So I just went into the features that really meant the most to me, things that I'd actually use myself. And that's all about the samples, how you find samples and download them and use them. And that's the main thing for me. And to be honest, both of them have their pros, both of them have their cons. And to be honest, I'm still on the fence. I'm not quite sure which one I'd pick. Now, I've been using Splice for the longest time, and the reason for that is because I love their catalog. Their catalog of sound is fantastic, and that is probably why I'm still going to keep using Splice, because I love the sounds that I find on there. I find their search engine to be really, really good. All the sounds are really well tagged, and I can get to the stuff that I really want, stuff that inspires me. That's where I can usually find the sounds that I need for my tracks. That's why I usually go for that. However, their app is just not the greatest. It does work, it does what it needs to do, it downloads the samples and they're there on your hard drive, but it could be so much better. It could be tightly integrated with your DAW and make it so much easier for previewing sounds along with the track that you're playing. That would just be the ultimate for me. There's also a few little bugs here and there within the software, so it probably is mostly about that. Once they got that sorted, then it's just going to be a no-brainer. And some of the added features on top of that, yeah, Splice is a fantastic subscription. I definitely recommend it. And onto Loopcloud, well, that really did surprise me. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been using it in projects, in remixes, original tracks, and I found it to be really good within my kind of workflow. I think it's just all about the app. The app is the killer feature. The fact that it tightly integrates with your DAW, so that whatever you're previewing, whatever samples you're playing, are playing in time with your project. It's just one of those amazing things. It just means finding a sample is so much quicker in that respect. And matching the key as well. I usually, when I'm searching on Splice, I search by key, so I find the stuff in the right key, and that usually kind of then fits nicely within my project. But with Loopmasters and Loopcloud, I'm looking at samples that I wouldn't have looked at before because they wouldn't have been in the right key, but it's transposing it in real time. And yeah, I'm finding a whole load of samples that I wouldn't normally do. Now, as far as the catalog goes, I still think that Splice has the edge on Loopmasters for catalog. There isn't as many samples on Splice, but I feel the quality is better. That's just for my own sound and the sounds that I've found on there. They just seem to be more right for me on Splice. But that's something that I'm sure will change with Loopmasters over time. There will be more people coming onto Loopmasters, more people making samples for Loopmasters, and maybe, yeah, over time, maybe there'll be more samples that will be up my street. The other thing is maybe the fact that it's let me down a couple of times only in these couple of weeks. So sometimes when it's been a bit slow or I haven't been able to use it at all because the service has been down for a few hours, means I can't even get to the samples that I'm paying for. So yeah, that's a real pain. And I think those are just little issues that hopefully they'll get over. I can almost forgive it for the fact that the software is so easy to use and the fact that I can use it so well within my projects, and I can preview samples as quickly as possible. As I always say, it's all about trying to get ideas down as quick as possible. And I think for my money, I think Loopcloud does it in a better way. It just so happens that Splice has better sounds. So yeah, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not quite sure which one to go for, and I think I might even leave both of these subscriptions going for a few months just to see which one I kind of get the most out of. I can't really tell you which one is better because you need to try both. You need to kind of try them both out, see what you think. Both of them have trial versions. I'll put links in the description below. If you want to check out either of those trials, you can have a go with that and see what you think. For my money, I think you should try them both because they are both awesome. So hopefully this video has helped you. As I say, it's just my opinion. I've been testing this stuff out and I thought I'd let you know my opinion and how I'm going to be using these tools. I still haven't made my mind up, but I'm sure I'll let you know as time goes on. If you enjoyed this video, give the video a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification icon so you're notified whenever I upload a brand new video. I've got a load more videos like this on my channel, so definitely check them out if you haven't already, and hopefully I'll see you again in the next video.
Let's get it.